Hi, it's me, Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut. Welcome to part 2 of my tour of SpaceX's Starbase factory with the ultimate tour guide, Elon Musk. If you haven't watched part 1, you obviously need to watch that because there's just gobs of information. And in this part, we're actually going to go inside the 3 main assembly tents, which is incredible. And just like last time, we have a map that'll occasionally pop up, courtesy of Ring Watchers on Twitter, that'll help you understand where exactly we are in the factory. We also have the YouTube playbar broken up into certain sections. We have links to those sections below too. And we have an article up on our website that has some key points and takeaways of this conversation. The link in the description is below for that at everydayastronaut.com. All right, let's go check out some Raptor engines. So, by the way, I think there's a good chance that ITAR and comms might not want all
yeah,
this.
just like, you know, it just can't be any more than people are already getting from
That's true.
Telephoto lenses.
Which is pretty much everything.
And frankly, if some fool wants to copy this design, go for it. I mean, Raptor 2 is a giant improvement over this. So,
what's like the big simplifications you're hoping to have?
oh, maybe I shouldn't tell you all the secrets. We have like funny things on the good Pikachu over there.
I love that.
Hello again.
Hello again. So that probably, I assume that means it's flown? Is that a flown one?
I don't know if this one's been flown.
Jeez. This really does look like that thing with all the NK-33s. You know, those videos
exactly.
of
like the engines discovered for engines that came back from the cold.
Yes, it seriously literally looks like that. This is insane. And the man, that Rat Pack is big. Jeez.
Yeah, I won't tell you all the secrets, but just like you'll be able to see the difference very clearly.
Okay.
And I guess since the engines are, it's hard to have people not see them.
Yeah.
They will. You will. It's the Raptor 2 is visibly cleaner than Raptor 1. Like it's this sort of maze of plumbing and wiring doesn't exist on Raptor 2.
Although it's already slimmed down a ton from like
it used to look like a friggin' Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't even see the engine for all the stuff that was around it.
No, you really couldn't. And now it's like, especially around the turbines and stuff and the pre-burners, I mean, that used to be a whole, there's sensors every 2 millimeters.
Yes.
So RapVac or RaptorVac has its own regen channel on the extension, it looks like.
Yeah, that's a steel tube wall, brazed steel tube wall.
That looks great. And it has a different profile too. That actually looks like the initial exit. Is there a different throat in it and everything, or
no,
is it?
Throat's the same.
Throat's the same.
It's just the part after the throat that's the diverging section has a different angle. It's basically following a route contour for a higher expansion ratio.
Yeah, yeah. What is expansion ratio again? Is it like 150 or something?
No. Man, I think we're, so this is actually, I think we're around 80-ish.
Oh, okay.
But we want to do a little bit better, maybe 90. So.
Because you're already getting like 380 ISP out of that thing, aren't you? Or, I mean, sorry, yeah, 380.
380 is the aspirational number.
Okay.
But we should be, we think we'll get like 377 or 378.
Okay.
So,
okay. And how are those coming along? It looks like obviously you've got a third one here. You've obviously made at least 3.
Yeah.
And obviously S20 is going to have 3.
Yes.
Yes.
So.
Jeez.
But for Raptor, all the engines will have the same pumps and thrust chamber assembly. So it's really just they'll be one one variant that has a big nozzle and one variant that doesn't have thrust vector control actuators.
Okay. Okay. So that's going to be the difference between the R boost and the.
Yeah, I mean it's basically the same engine minus TVC.
Gotcha. So the outer shells that you're working on for the GSE are 12 meters.
So there's a Raptor without the stuff. Looks practically naked.
You're like, actually, that's secretly version 2. It's super simple. No.
Version 2 will look a bit like that, actually.
Really?
It's very tight.
Really? I mean, again, kind of when you look at some of those Soviet engines, they were also like incredibly simple looking, I'm guessing they just obviously didn't have them wired to the gills with electronics though either, you know?
They did. They simply did. Back in those days, they did not have good electronics.
Right.
So there's nothing to.
There's nothing to wire up.
Yeah.
Is how much like I feel like you iterate this quite a bit and remind people that it's failure kind of is an option. Why do you think people are so afraid to fail, and why do you embrace it, or how do you teach that culture even that it's okay when you're not even trying to, like, you know, SN8 is a perfect example. You weren't trying to like do a mission, you're just trying to get data out of the thing.
Yeah. We have just a fundamentally different optimization for Starship versus, say, like the polar extreme would be Dragon. Like Dragon, there can be no failures ever. Everything's got to be tested to, you know, 6 ways to Sunday. There has to be tons of margin. There can never be a failure ever for any reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
So there cannot be, so that's like extreme conservatism. Then Falcon is a little less conservative. It is possible for us to have, say, a failure of the booster on landing. That's not the end of the world.
Right.
And then for Starships is like the polar opposite of Dragon. We're iterating rapidly in order to create the first ever fully reusable rocket, orbital rocket. And fully and rapidly reusable. Reusable in a way that is like an aircraft. So rapidly reusable rockets.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. That's the fundamental holy grail for making life multiplanetary.
Where do you think the space shuttle failed in being, definitely rapidly would be a word you got to scratch off the list. And refurbishable might
definitely
be a better
not
word. But where do you think it failed, and where do you think, like, what lessons have you learned that you know you're not going to be making on Starship?
Space shuttle had almost no room for iteration because there were people on board. So you couldn't be blowing up shuttles.
Yeah.
So that's a big problem.
Yeah. Well, they did very, very little iteration. I mean, yeah, like
very little. In fact, lack of iteration was the problem.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the issues they were aware of, but people were too afraid to make change.
There's a design froze.
Yeah, because it's like, yeah, I mean, there was risk-reward asymmetry. So big punishment for if you make a change and something goes wrong, big punishment. If you make a change and it goes right, small reward.
Yep.
So the issues with the O-ring and then with the insulation coming off and hitting the wing were, they'd seen this before.
Yeah, they were known.
There are known issues.
Yeah.
So, but because it had worked before, they're like, well, it worked before. Russian roulette works before.
Right.
So, look, I've pulled the trigger so many times. There must be no bullets in this gun.
It must be no problem.
Yeah, so, anyway, it's just, it's hard to iterate, though, when people are on every mission. So, you can't just be blowing stuff up because you're going to kill people. Starship does not have anyone on board, so we can blow things up.
Yep.
That's really helpful.
Do you have any considerations yet on any kind of launch escape, or are you just hoping that by the time you put people on it, you've flown it, say 100 to 200 times, and you're familiar with all the failure modes, and you've mitigated it to a high degree of confidence, or what's your...
Launch escape, I think, is, you basically just need to fly a lot and have a lot of redundancy. So if you lose an engine on the booster, it doesn't matter, basically. If you lose multiple engines, it shouldn't matter. And you should be able to lose an engine on the ship, everything's okay. Because launch escape is basically just protecting you for the ascent phase. And actually most launch escape systems only protect you for a small part of the ascent phase, because the typical launch escape system is a solid rocket motor on the tip of the capsule.
Yep.
Which then has to be
jettisoned.
It has to be jettisoned on every mission. So if it's not jettisoned, the crew dies.
That's a failure mode right there.
That's a failure mode.
Yeah.
So you have a state change post liftoff, which is bad. Then because the damn thing's so heavy, they also can't carry it all the way to orbit. So they'll typically jettison the the escape system shortly after second stage ignition.
Yep.
Or final stage ignition.
Yeah.
So then you don't have escape all the way to orbit even. Now, at least with Dragon, we have escape all the way to orbit. So that's like, I think, safety improvement.
Yeah.
But then you know, there's no escape system coming back to Earth. Like, that doesn't exist.
Right.
And then you can't have an escape system on the Moon or on Mars.
Or on Mars, yep.
Yeah, so, like, you can't have something pop off and then have chutes drop. There's no atmosphere.
Right.
And then Mars has a very low density atmosphere, so
yeah,
they'll just like hit the ground supersonic, you know?
Right.
They're not gonna save you. So the ship has to be safe enough for people without an escape system.
Right.
Because otherwise you can't go to the Moon, can't go to Mars.
Right.
So
you
kind of
might
pointless to do it on Earth.
Well, it
just fly it a lot.
Right, and that, I mean, I never really thought about that, you know, you're gonna be, you're gonna be flying so much without fear of retribution of failure, that unlike the shuttle, like you mentioned, I just never really considered that, you know?
Yeah.
So, let's see. What is, those are the vacuum mounts, aren't they?
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, this is stuff like very much version 1. So
yep.
It'll be a lot better with the next iteration.
Well, a lot of people ask me, you know, like, hey, I want to start a YouTube video. Where do I start? And I'll be like, start. You just have to start. And I kind of feel like this is a similar philosophy. It's like, you're not going to know what's wrong or how to make it better until you do it at least once anyway, you know? And you just simply have to start. You have to force yourself to start.
Yeah.
And then, that's that you improve from there.
Exactly.
Man, are you pretty used to the heat? I feel like it's pretty hot out here.
It is hot. I mean, this is the worst. This is like summer, you know, so.
Right.
That's just like the worst of it.
Yeah.
But it's not that bad. If you think like, just pretend you're in Hawaii.
Right. There you go. So speaking of shuttle.
I mean, I think it's a cool view.
Oh, it's a really cool view. Oh, and thermal protection. It seems like you guys have made some, I mean, it looks like S20 is going to be pretty well decked out in the stuff. How are you feeling about the thermal protection system? You feel like that's a pretty good solution?
We'll find out.
Have they been holding up pretty good, at least on the low altitude stuff, as far as the mounting points and stuff like that?
It hasn't pulled. I mean, it's still there. I mean, you can see the videos.
Yeah.
It takes off with the tiles and it lands with the tiles.
Yep.
And we have, I think, a good attach mechanism, which seems like a good attach mechanism, because it allows. It's just mechanically attached with some play in the tiles, so the tile can move a little bit. It's quite a tricky thing with the tiles, because the tiles are essentially a ceramic.
Right.
And they're attached to a metal substructure that is changing in temperature dramatically. So it'll be, you know, room temperature right now, then it'll drop to cryo temperature when it's loaded with cryogenic propellants. Mm-hmm. Then it will be heated up with hot ullage gas. Yep. So now it'll be way above room temperature. Then it'll cool down. Then the tiles themselves will get hot on re-entry, and they also have some expansion.
Yep.
So there's a lot of expanding and contracting going on all over the place. So I think one of the big questions is, are these tiles, are we going to have a crack or a gap in the tiles? Like if they bang into each other, the ceramics, like a coffee cup is ceramic. So if you bang two coffee cups together, it's usually bad.
It's not good, yeah.
So if we, if the tiles bang each other and crack, this could result in a failure on entry. So I think there's like a huge question of like, when we get the ship to orbit, how is it able to make it back through Earth's atmosphere? Because it's coming like a meteor.
Right.
You know, it's like blazing hot meteor. Will the heat shield stand up to it, or if there's if there's any crack in the armor, it's toast.
Yeah, yeah.
So hopefully we at least find out where the crack in the armor is.
Right,
that would be great.
And then if you have to, you can make some thicker or smaller, iterate to that degree of where you find those failures again.
Yes.
How will you know? Like, what if something just goes? What if the first orbital attempt just goes totally, doesn't even make it in for re-entry? And it's just a million pieces at the bottom of the ocean. How will you know where it failed?
I mean, we have temperature sensors.
Nice.
We'll probably need like some thermal images inside the tanks. So just like IR cameras.
So you can see if a certain section is getting real hot.
Yeah, IR cameras on the inside will show you what the backside temperature is.
Yeah, yeah. I'll let you know if a leak
it's only going to pop if the backside temperature, like it was, frankly, I'm not sure, I take it back. If you just have a camera,
you'll know.
Visual,
yeah,
you'll see is something glowing white hot, okay, that's bad.
Yeah.
That's the bad part, right there. So you don't even need a thermal imager, frankly.
Yeah.
The steel will glow white hot before it melts.
Right.
So.
You'll know.
You'll know. It's so subtle.
And the very first orbital test, again, it kind of seems like, are you guys, there's been a lot of debate of like, is it going to orbit and deorbiting, or is it just orbital velocity with a low perigee that's inside the atmosphere, and that's how it'll deorbit? Like, will it?
No, it's getting to orbital velocity, but but it's not circularizing its perigee.
Yes.
So it basically goes like 3/4 of the way around the Earth, but because we didn't raise the perigee, the atmospheric drag will pull it in.
Yep. And the velocity will probably be greater. Re-entry velocity will be greater that way, or similar.
Similar.
Yeah.
It's not a huge difference. But it basically it could easily, like, if you just puff like the attitude control thrusters or like the ullage gas alone could put it into orbit. So like raising perigee slightly is easy.
Yeah.
It's like remarkably easy. So you just want to raise it like a little bit.
Are you hoping to actually recover the first one, or like try to even land, or any? I mean, is it going to try to fire
Our goal with
its
the first
engines?
one is for the first orbital launch. Our goal is to make it to orbit without blowing up.
Yeah,
that's our goal.
Yep.
And frankly, if the booster even does its job and something goes wrong with the ship, I would still count that as good progress.
Yeah.
Like basically, actually, to be totally frank, if it takes off without blowing up the blowing up the stand, stage 0, which is much harder to replace than the booster, that would be a victory. Please do not blow up on the stand. That's my number one concern.
But you keep calling you calling the stand stage 0?
The launch system.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. The ground GSE, the tower, and all that stuff.
Stage 0, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's. I got so spoiled now with again Soviet nomenclature. It's like there's 0 for like the boosters of Soyuz, and
really?
the core is 1.
Okay.
And then what I would call opposite. The boosters are 1, core is 2. But what like the next upper stage, or what I would consider stage 2, is stage 3. So it's really confusing, and I kept being like, oh yeah, third, second stage, and they're like, no, that's third stage,
So stage 0, the launch system.
Yeah.
The launch mount, the flame diverter.
Yep.
Sort of.
Yep. Sort of.
The big tower.
Yeah.
The propellant farm. And all that's basically, all the lines and everything. That's stage 0, and it's very hard.
Yeah.
It's harder for us to make a stage 0 than to make a booster or a ship.
Okay.
So
hopefully it doesn't blow.
Yes, that would be great. And then, like the best case outcome for the first flight would be that the booster does its job and also is able to relight the engines, and it's going to splash down.
Yep.
In the Gulf.
Only like 20 miles out or something, right?
Yeah,
or
not far.
Relative.
And then the ship or upper stage is going to come in just off the coast of Hawaii, near a military base there. And so we'll, splash down in the Pacific.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
again, to reiterate, on the first launch, the booster, you're going to just use the gas venting to orient it for re-entry. Is it won't even do you will do a boost back burn though on the first one too, right?
Let's just say it's an evolving situation.
Yeah.
In order to be 20 miles away, we definitely would have to do some kind of boost back, otherwise it's going to be way further.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, probably it's a boost back and then a propulse, and then basically you want to simulate the landing, but not have it be too close to land, so it doesn't take out stage 0.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
So we want to say, like, basically, can we position the booster precisely, such that if it had landed next to the tower, or if it had come to a halt next to the tower, could the arms have grabbed it?
Yes.
Mechazilla.
Yeah, Mechazilla.
Megazilla.
Megazilla?
Mecha?
Mechazilla. Okay. Yeah, like a giant
like Mechazilla.
Yeah. What's the plan? Does it just come in and it sits then on the grid fins or that little arrestor thing?
No, those little tiny arms.
That tiny little T-Rex arm is going to hold the.
Yes, there's 2 of them. But those things can take a lot of load.
And then it's just literally like a flat arm, kind of like this. That.
I mean, this is one of those things, like, it's hard to keep a secret when it's right there. People can just take zoomed up, but like drive past it and take a high-res photo close up. So it's not exactly going to be top secret.
Right.
This is the first real big rocket development that's been so close to a public road that people are literally driving to the beach right past the launch site. So it's hard to keep a secret around here.
That brings up, I always keep wondering, like, you know, we're seeing this insane pace, we're seeing all these crazy things happen. How much of that, like, is normal, at least as far as SpaceX goes, or how much of that is just because we're actually seeing it? Like, for instance, when you're developing Merlin and Falcon 9, were you blowing stuff up this much, doing things so crazy, fast paced? Or is this, like, also fast paced, but now we're also seeing it all, so it's hard to compare?
Well, I mean, this is definitely a case where we are washing our laundry in public.
Yeah.
And there's always dirty laundry in any program. Mm-hmm. It's really a question of whether it is seen or not.
Yeah.
Not is there dirty laundry.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Every program's got dirty laundry, but in this case, it's in public. But this is also a case where we're intentionally iterating the design rapidly.
Yep.
And basically, ships and boosters will either be amazing lawn ornaments, which then have to be stored, and they look awesome, but we don't want 12 of them. It's going to look bizarre, and where will we put them?
Yeah.
So, since we're making rapid iterations with each, almost with basically every single ship and booster has had significant iterations, but you either want it to blow up, or the early ones, you want them to blow up, or you're going to have to find a place to store them.
Right.
So we actually want to push the envelope, and frankly, like, if you don't push the envelope, you cannot achieve the goal of a fully and rapidly reusable rocket.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
You have to go close to the edge on margins.
Right. Right.
And there's a recursive factor to mass. So, like, if you add, say, an extra ton of heat shielding, now you also need more propellant to get it to orbit, and you need more propellant to deorbit it, and you need more propellant to land it.
Yes.
And the structure now has more load, so because it's carrying that extra ton of heat shield.
Yes.
So this applies to any given ton. There's a recursive value.
Yeah.
So in order to achieve the same payload, you have to. Each ton is like basically almost like adding 2 tons when it's fully considered.
Definitely.
So I think we calculated it to be like a 1.8 factor, but I think it's probably we're forgetting something so it's closer to 2.
Yeah.
So every 1 ton of mass begets an extra ton.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's, for instance, like what's S20's dry mass kind of looking like? What are you at right now? Are you like 120 tons? Or are you?
I actually don't know the exact mass of 20. We'll know it when we weigh it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of parts that have not been weighed.
Yeah.
So like, what is it actually? I mean, I hope it's not too insane. Ideally, it's dry. Its dry mass is hopefully not much more than 100 tons.
Really?
So Yes, but then you say like dry, do you mean not counting the air inside it?
Right.
Because by the way, the air mass is non-trivial.
No, it's not.
This is a giant volume. And then, do you mean dry? Do you mean with propellant residuals and ullage gas, which is at several atmospheres?
Right.
Which mass are you referring to?
Dry mass,
like
right.
sometimes in these things, they'll play games with like when you say thrust weight of a rocket engine. So thrust weight of the rocket engine with or without residuals. That's a big change.
Or with or without gimbal is something else that I've heard people kind of debate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Merlin is, I'm pretty sure, by any standard, I think it's probably the best thrust weight of any engine.
Yeah.
Because it's like just so far, we really pushed the GG cycle engine to the, it's like A plus for GG cycle architecture, but GG cycle architecture is not an A plus architecture.
Right.
Full flow stage combustion, A plus architecture, but with a new architecture, we won't get an A plus within that. Like it's like in gymnastics, you like say how hard is your program,
right?
And then what grade do you get in the program?
Yeah.
That's kind of how the things work here. So,
what would you say version 2 is going to kind of come in at? If you were to rate them,
I don't know. I'd say it's like B plus.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah. So good enough for now, but of course.
Yeah, Raptor 3, Raptor 4, Raptor 5.
Yeah.
By Raptor 5, it'll be an A plus.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Should we walk through here and check out what's going on in here? This is just a nose cone being assembled. It's not that it's showing.
This is our new and improved nose cone.
Oh yeah, it's just straight. There's no cross section.
Yeah. So this is if you look at that nose cone over there, that's made from stamped sections.
Yeah.
So you can see that's like 3 rows of stamped sections.
Yep.
This will be made of 2 rows of stretch formed.
Wow.
So, and you can see it's just way smoother.
Yeah.
This is just stretched over like a big mandrel. So just take a big sheet of steel.
Wow.
And you just stretch it over this giant tool.
Right.
So, and then you can have like things that are way bigger. Like you can't fit this in a stamping press.
Right.
This is way too big. That's like basically about as long as you can fit in a stamping press. You cannot fit something this giant in well, you could technically make some totally special case stamping machine that doesn't exist.
Right.
But you only need one, since you only need a single-sided, it doesn't have like indentations or anything, so like you couldn't make a car body side this way, but you can make something with this level of symmetry that basically you can do a one-sided die.
Okay.
So you can just stretch form it over a big mandrel.
And this isn't the cargo. It's not it's just not complete yet, but it had the opening on the one side. That's not because you're working on the door, the jaws yet, right?
Yeah, I actually stopped work on the door, the fairing door.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to focus on getting to orbit.
Yep.
We don't need a door.
Yep.
So it's like we need to be super focused on getting to orbit, then super focused on getting the ship back, and then we can worry about doors.
Okay.
It's just like unnecessary complexity. So like, is the door necessary to solve the problem? No. Will we use this? The first 10 or more that get back from orbit, we probably won't fly them again.
Right.
Or maybe once or twice, but then they're going to be in storage. Like for Falcon 9, and even like the Block 5, so-called Block 5, which is more like version 7.
Yeah.
Really. But we don't even want to use the early Block 5s. So like even those are a pain in the ass, and we prefer to retire them. So like when we have like a mission that requires an expendable booster, we'll put an early Block 5, because the early Block 5s are not as good as the later Block 5s.
Wow.
And they're more of a pain in the ass to get ready for flight.
Wow.
So the reality is the early ones are going to be amazing lunar ornaments.
Yeah.
I mean, as good as lunar ornament gets, but they will not be nearly as good as the ones that follow, so then why keep them flying?
And they're not even going to be doing any, they're not going to be putting any payload up, they're not, you don't even need to worry about it.
We're just going to retire the early ones anyway, so why have a door on a thing that's never going to fly satellites anyway?
Yeah. How is the butt-to-butt refueling going? Is that, because that's got to be a pretty early consideration, because you're probably going to want to start testing that.
No, we're going to get to orbit and back first.
Okay.
We don't need orbital refilling unless you want to go to, going to the moon, you need orbital refilling. Going to Mars, you need orbital refilling. Delivering satellites to Earth orbit, you do not need orbital refilling.
Right.
So let's punt that to later.
Okay.
I'm not sure it'll be the butts about it. It might be something different. Like the, we switched the propellant full drain lines to be side, to come in from the side.
Not up through the booster anymore?
Because it was adding a bunch of stuff to the booster, and then we're flying it every time. So it's better, if you can move mass to the ground side, it's better to move mass to the ground side.
Right.
That's why we took the legs off the booster and just have the tower catch it.
Are you thinking about doing a tower catching?
Which sounds mad. I mean,
yeah, I know.
I know it sounds insane, but when I suggested that, people thought I was lost my mind, which I'm like, maybe I have. But I think it might take a few kicks at the can, but we'll get it right.
Yeah.
And then it just the work that you have to do to pick up the booster and put it on the launch stand, this gigantic skyscraper thing, in high wind, like windy situations. It's very windy around here.
Yeah, it is.
So you're gonna pick up this booster, you gotta put it onto its stand with precision. Then you gotta pick a ship up and put it up on top of that. So that means you've got to have a secondary arm to steady the booster so it's not moving around all over the place.
Yeah.
And then while the sort of Mechazal arms pick up the ship and put it on the booster.
Okay. So that the Mechazilla arms are the ones that are going to be picking up the ship, not the crane?
Okay, so it's very important to appreciate that everything you see here is a work in progress.
Right.
What is said last week may be untrue next week.
We've seen that a few times.
Yes, it could be that we're actually just literally mistaken, a miscommunication, any one of a number of things.
Yeah.
We just had a better idea. In the case of, for the first stacking, we're going to do that with a crane.
Yeah.
We will, so, yeah, Marvin the Martian right there.
I love that.
So, the first one we're going to stack with the crane. Because otherwise we'd have to wait for all the mechanisms to work. So we're assembling the arms and basically putting Mechazilla together. But in the meantime, we could be launching.
Right.
So let's not wait for the tower to be completed. We've got the second biggest crane on Earth. We don't necessarily want to have the second biggest crane on Earth just sitting there forever.
Right.
But it can be there for the first stacking. And then from the first stacking, then we can figure out, do we have the hold downs work? Or the launch mounts, I should say.
Yeah.
So it's really quite a complicated launch mount. It's got basically 20 mount points.
Right.
And you got to line those things up and then put the booster on it and have the, does it fit? Mm-hmm. Okay, it won't fit.
Right,
basically.
Right.
Now we're going to adjust it.
Yeah.
Okay. That launch ring is 370 tons.
Right.
So, and it's going to tweak, you move it from one place to another, it tweaks.
Yeah.
It doesn't stay exactly the same. So we're going to have to jiggle it around a little bit, put in some shims and stuff, and fit the booster.
Yep.
So we want to do that soon. We should be done with this booster, I don't know, next week.
Yep.
So,
wow.
So then we want to mount the booster next week.
That's gonna be insane to see.
Yeah. We're gonna try to put the ring on the stand, the launch ring on the stand tomorrow.
Wow.
But we may not succeed. We'll see.
Yeah.
So probably the second flight will use. It's very likely the second flight will use the tower.
Okay. Second flight will use. Oh, so the first flight might still just use the suborbital pad.
No, it's going to use the. It's going to use. It has to use the orbital pad. We can't. The orbital. The suborbital pad cannot take the full weight of the stack. It's going to get crushed, and it doesn't have enough height. So the rocket would blast itself in the face. It's too low and too weak.
Yeah. Okay.
So we got to launch it from the the super beefy stand.
Yep.
But we don't want to wait until everything's ready with the tower just to stack.
Okay, so how will you secure it then when it's stacked? Like, just drop the Starship on top?
Have the crane hold it.
Until it's launch time and then...
No. We do need the QD arm to work.
Yeah, oh, right. So that can be a stability thing.
Yeah, exactly. It holds it, it stabilizes it, and transfers propellant. If we don't have that, we can't load prop in the on the ship.
Right. Okay, so that has to be complete.
Yeah.
But not necessarily the arms and everything else going on at that point.
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah,
at
exactly.
this point, what
I
thing?
mean, we're like I said, there's a lot of moving pieces here. So some of this could be ready in time. It's possible that the tower could be ready in time, in which case we'll use the tower.
Yeah.
But if the tower's not ready in time, we'll use the crane.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at this point in development, what things are you being kept up by at night? Like, what's the thing you're like, oh, we just need to, do this or this better, or we really, I can't sleep because we haven't figured this out yet.
Sorry?
Yeah. So what things are just totally keeping you up at night at this point? What's the thing that you feel like you still have to solve at this point?
I mean, there's a long list. So,
what's at the top of that right now for you, at least personally?
Well, this is really all just measured as in terms of time. Like, what is the time risk associated with something?
Right.
The one thing you cannot replace is time. So, and I do have a habit of being optimistic with schedules. I mean, if I wasn't optimistic, I wouldn't be doing, the crazy things that I'm doing.
Right.
So I must have, like, I don't know, just pathologically optimistic, I suppose.
Wow, that actually, look at that.
Yeah, it looks like dragon scales.
That is incredible.
Doesn't that look cool?
It's actually like coming together a lot cleaner.
It totally looks like dragon scales.
It really does.
Yeah.
And it's so much tidier and cleaner looking than I thought.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few broken tiles, but overall it looks cool.
That's incredible. Wow. So, I guess the joints is one of those things that the community's always wanted to know about. I guess the good thing is the flaps will mostly take most of the wind from this area that you see. So I guess you don't really have to cool the inside of the flap joint itself because it's kind of already.
No, actually, unfortunately, we do. I think we have significant. Take a lot of what I'm saying with a grain of salt because I often am wrong. So sometimes I'll say something that's wrong. But I'll, I think we have a design error with the non-moving portion of the forward flaps.
Okay.
Because the reason we have the flaps and the static arrow, basically the unmoving portion of the flaps, are there to do two things: to rebalance the ship, so it doesn't come in engines first, because that's otherwise the center of mass is quite low.
Yeah.
And it will come in engines first and burn up the engines.
Yep.
So first you have to rebalance it so that in a hypersonic regime you're doing like roughly sort of like 60 to 70 degree angle of attack.
Yep.
Because you're flying a trajectory that minimizes peak heat. But you don't care about total heat load. You just care about minimizing your peak heat. Because
you have a good insulator here, and you're not ablating.
Yes, exactly. So if you have an ablative heat shield like Dragon, technically Dragon is like fairly reusable actually because it's sort of like a brake pad. You could fly it many times. Yeah. Because it's got so much margin. Yeah. But a pica is literally means phenolic impregnated carbon ablator. Yep. So that's the Dragon heat shield. So Dragon is like, hey, let's give me a high peak heating, but don't make my total heat load high because what Dragon is trying to optimize for is what is the heat pulse when it's under parachutes and it's been the heat pulse moves through the tile and then reaches the back to where it's bonded to the carbon fiber composite sandwich structure.
Yep.
And if the heat pulse is if the heat is too high, it will melt the glue, and the heat shield tiles will start falling off, and then they will potentially, just damage the parachute.
Really?
Yeah. If you start having like these things like
flying off.
Potentially, because they're low density, so they're pretty, and like it's like, admittedly, it's kind of a corner case, but that's it. That's like the Dragon heat shield tiles are way over thick, because not because of how much of the heat shield will be bladed, but because of the heat pulse that will reach the back of the heat shield that might melt the glue while it's under a parachute.
Wow.
So it's,
interesting constraint at the end of it all. You know,
yeah,
it's like,
so if you just have a lot of heat suddenly, that's actually better for Dragon. Like high peak, low total heating.
Yep. And so its re-entry profile is totally different too. It can come in steeper as opposed to this.
Dragon wants to come in like just real steep. Yeah. And it's like the lift over drag ratio is low for Dragon. I mean, a lot of people look at it and say it doesn't have any lift, but it does. If you have a gumdrop shaped thing and you have offset center of mass, then you can control it because it has a small lift vector, because the gumdrop is like tilting into the wind slightly.
Yep.
It's quite low. And actually, L over D is a function of Mach number. Most people will quote an L over D number, but like, okay, what Mach is that?
Right.
And it's usually like some sort of reference Mach number, but like your L over D is complete trash at like Mach 20. It's garbage, nothing basically. So it's like L over D at what Mach number? Anyway, so it's got a very low L over D, but it does have a lift vector. And then because it is symmetric, or more or less symmetric, with little thrusters, you can rotate the capsule as it's coming in and change that lift vector.
Yeah.
And then, so then you have a landing ellipsoid because your accuracy longitudinally is less than your accuracy left to right. So you're changing lift vector. You say, well, how do you change the point where you land? If you can turn left or right, but how do you change this
distance,
point? You do a series of S-turns. So you S-turn, and depending upon how much you bank during the S-turns, that affects your longitudinal points.
Yes.
And then your lateral points is pretty easy to tune because you have a lift vector going left and right.
Because it's not so much, people might think like, oh, you're going up and down. That really doesn't work in the grand scheme of orbital velocities and everything. It's really about just your actual velocity, and where you end up arresting your velocity is where you're going to drop it to the ground, pretty much, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just very important for people to appreciate that there's a very gigantic difference between orbit and space.
Right.
It is actually relatively easy to get to space, but it is very hard to get to orbit.
Right.
And then if you say you want to go to orbit and come back, this is easily 100 times harder than getting to space.
Yeah.
Maybe 1,000. So much harder. That hardly anyone's even, only a few countries have been able to do it.
Right.
So, whereas Burt Rutan went to space twice, like 12 years ago? I don't know, 15 years ago?
2005, yeah.
Yeah, it was like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
He went to the border of space twice.
Yep.
And didn't even need, they didn't even scorch the paint.
Right.
So that's like, it's really not very hot if you didn't even burn the paint.
Right, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Whereas this needs like really intense heat shielding, or it's gonna get to, blow up basically.
Yeah. It's crazy to see now, honestly. So is there some considerations to make the fix? Can we go out this way, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, just don't let anything drop on your head.
All right, deal. So there's another barrel section of S20.
I mean, it looks a little garage shop, to be frank, but it's like weirdly like super advanced technology with garage shop.
Well, it is very unique of you guys to basically build the rockets first and then start building a factory around it.
Because the production system is the actual hard thing.
Right.
The rocket design is relatively easy compared to the factory. And these tiles are actually made in Florida at a SpaceX factory, which is called a bakery, in Florida. It's next to a Ron John's, literally.
What's the future for Florida with Starship? Are you gonna get it flying 100%, get it all figured out basically, at least get like orbital version ready, and then start setting up shop in Florida and do like?
Yeah, I think we want to kind of iron out the major issues here, and then we'll certainly be launching Starship from the Cape. We might do more at the Cape, but we'll certainly be launching a Starship from the Cape. And like I said, we make the heat shield tiles, which is actually quite a big factory to make these heat shield tiles, not a small factory. So
next to Ron John's? I didn't.
Well, technically it's next to a Ron John's distribution warehouse.
Okay. Okay.
Literally, I was like, is that a surf shop? Oh, so it's yeah, or maybe it's like a factory. I don't know, but it's got a Ron John's logo.
Cool.
But the factory, the SpaceX heat shield tile factory is quite big. It's not tiny, because there's a lot of, you need to make a lot of these tiles.
And for the most part, I'm surprised at the taper. It looks like they're all still uniform tiles, which obviously is a huge improvement compared to the shuttle. Instead of having 24,000 unique tiles.
As you can see, we're figuring it out.
I'm surprised though, even as the area tapers, it's not. I would thought.
Man, I would have wear. Mara's head of heat shield engineering. It's like I'm gonna text him like, "Yo, man, what's going on?"
It doesn't seem like there's a ton of unique. They mostly look uniform, which obviously will help with.
Yeah, they're not all uniform, but.
A lot more than the shuttle. What's your expected, what are you hoping to get for reuse out of these things?
I mean, no meaningful limit. As many as you want.
There we go. We got right back into camera reception for you there for a second. Camera inside a camera.
Yeah, there are different shaped tiles. You can see some of them at the border there are square instead of hexagons.
Yep.
And then because the static arrow is it's still seeing actually a lot of heat. Basically the plasma is hitting this, it's hitting the surface, and then it's moving around. It's got to somehow get past it. So gets superheated plasma hitting that thing, then riding up the side of the vehicle, hitting that static arrow. So you actually have a heat concentration there. And then you got a hinge that's, you have to protect the hinge. This is, if you said like, okay, what's highest probability of failure on re-entry? It's probably the hinge of the flaps.
Okay.
So the rear hinge and the forward hinge of the flaps, because you have to have a rotating thing.
Yes.
But you can't just make everything out of tiles, so you have to have a seal. So you have to have a seal against the tiles. The tiles are ceramic, like a seal against dinner plates that are super hot.
Yep.
So you can't use rubber.
Right.
So it's going to be a metal seal, and with a tortuous path. What?
Have you thought about, back in the day you talked about transpirational cooling.
Yes, so that's one of the things you could throw it at is transpiration cool the joint.
That would be so cool. I just want to see it bleeding methane, honestly, and just...
It will definitely help.
Yeah. Because you can kind of purge that joint with a higher pressure gas, you know, as long as it's higher than the ambient air stream or the plasma stream. It will create a thermal barrier.
It's definitely one of the things, if you really want to nail the heating on the hinge, is bleed fuel gas into the thing. Because actually, even the burning methane is like with air, because air is only like, you know, 21% oxygen. it was like when if you ask people what are you breathing, like they think they're breathing oxygen. You're breathing nitrogen with some oxygen,
a little argon,
and some argon and trace gases. Yep. So, but essentially, methane with air, which is mostly not oxygen, doesn't get that hot. So even if it burns, it's not that big of a deal.
Right, because it's already detached from the vehicle.
It's not as hot as the plasma that's hitting it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Wow.
All right, well, let's see. I guess the car is...
The car is by circuit.
Okay.
So each tent's kind of a designated, one's like barrel section, one's nose cones, and one's one's just kind of the thrust pucks and stuff, or
yeah, like I said, it is a constantly evolving thing. So
right,
we've changed what occurs in each production tent and in the high bay and mid bay multiple times. But this certainly currently is focused on the nose.
When you're working on a new high bay too, right?
Yeah, we're building a higher high bay.
Uber high?
It's not like, it's only a little bit higher than the current one, but it's much wider. And it has 2 gantry cranes that run full width and depth.
Okay.
So, I mean, it'll feel like the lateral luxury compared to our current high bay.
Like about how tall do you know?
Sorry?
About how tall?
I don't know, probably, it's like 100 meters.
Okay, and this one's?
The one's
like 80 or something?
Yeah, this one's about 80. So they got the booster height's about 70. Although, it's kind of funny, like technically we deleted half a barrel section from the booster, so it's technically 69 point something. Like 69 and a half.
You did that on purpose.
No, it wasn't even me. It was like, the guy's like, hey, they just let me know, we took at 70 meters you have a half barrel, which is a pain in the ass. So they just deleted it, and I was like, cool, that sounds good. I randomly set the length at 70 meters. It's not like anything special about it.
Right.
So, but then fate loves, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But these certain numbers just seem to be recurring all the time.
Yes.
And so the booster is actually 69 point something. And then it's booster 4 and ship 20. And this is all happenstance.
Right. I love
what
that.
What the hell is going on? So.
Well, oh yeah, someone had figured out that, what was it? It was like, I don't even remember what it was. Something like you were 69,420 like days old or minutes old or something when you went on SNL or something. Like it was like,
what?
Some ridiculous.
Are you serious?
Yes, it was like the weirdest.
No, I was born 69 days after 420, by the way.
Oh yeah. Come on.
Come on.
It's just ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
That's so funny.
I mean, what the hell?
Oh man. This is insane.
It's like, am I an avatar in someone's video game?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Statistically, yeah.
Okay.
You're probably doing pretty good at the game though. I'll bet you're like the top ranked player.
Okay. Well, that's something.
So do you have a name for the high bay bar yet?
No, I guess we've bounced around different names. We still haven't really made much use of it because it wasn't really critical path, so it's kind of just sat there.
Yeah.
And the elevator, we need to upgrade the elevator because we have like a construction elevator.
Right.
So, we don't yet have a name, nor have we used it. But we're making good progress there installing the grid fin.
Yeah, let's get the grid fins up. And I like how they're now at, let me try and guess why you're gonna put them closer together and not at 90-degree intervals. Is it because you can just change your roll to change whatever axis if you're trying to pitch the vehicle? You're really only most of the time probably either doing pitch or yaw. You're likely not doing pitch and yaw when it's coming in for re-entry.
Well, actually, no, we're controlling on 3 axes all the time. Now, technically, you only need 3 fins to control on 3 axes, but
But you can also roll if you need to change your yaw and roll 90 degrees to do pitch.
Well, the control authority you need is much more in pitch than in any of the other axes. But like the amount of control authority you need for roll is practically nothing.
Right.
But for pitch, you've got to basically push the booster down. So you're going to push this monster thing into the wind, and it doesn't want to go there.
Yep.
So the amount of pitch force you need, that's like where you need the most amount of force.
Yep.
So having the two pairs of fins like closer together, like more like an X-wing fighter,
yep,
allows them to contribute more in pitch.
Yep. Which then allows more glide or more of the airframe hitting the sides of the booster.
You care about like how much force do you have relative to how much force you need in a given axis.
Okay.
So you need a lot of force in the pitch axis. So that's where you want to bias your grid fins.
Yep. Yep.
You could arguably say they should be biased even closer together than they are currently.
Yeah.
But this is a reasonable guess.
In between.
Yeah.
Well, because this might end up pitching over more than the Falcon 9, because the Falcon 9 pitches pretty hard, but it's skinnier, and of course has less control authority with the 90-degree thing. So maybe this could pitch even more and arrest more of its velocity.
It's actually you've got various things that are better, some things that are better, some things that are worse. You can leave it like an airplane, like an empennage, where you've got a rudder.
Yeah.
A rudder and an elevator.
Yep.
And if your elevator is far away from your center of mass, then the amount of force you need is less to change the angle. Like just think of it like a seesaw.
Yeah.
You got a seesaw and or a wrench, and if you have a long wrench, it's easier to turn than a short wrench.
Yep.
So if you have a shorter booster, a short booster is harder to turn than a longer booster if you're, depending on where the control surface is relative to your center of mass.
Okay.
The center of mass is the kind of the where the seesaw, like it's seesawing around that center of mass.
Okay.
And center of pressure. You got two things basically. It's like it sounds more complicated than it is. But basically, it's a teeter-totter or seesaw. That's where there's a center of pressure and a center of mass.
Yep.
And it's going to basically just rotate around that.
Yep. Yep.
So if you've got a long stage where the grid fins are far away from your center of mass, then you need less force to turn it.
To turn it. Yep.
So basically,
Gotcha. That makes sense.
If you had like a really short stubby thing, it would actually be quite hard to move it.
To move it.
Yeah.
But at least as far as the fineness ratio, this has a lot more potential since it's wider to actually use the atmosphere to slow down before it even has to light its engines. Because like, you know how New Glenn has those strakes on the side, and it looks like they're really planning to almost, fly the thing for a little bit, at a pretty high angle of attack compared to the relative wind stream, to really let the atmosphere slow down the vehicle as much as possible. You guys have compared to Falcon 9, is a lot finer or a lot less fine ratio. It seems like you get a lot more lift out of the thing.
Realistically, this is going to come in at something close to terminal velocity.
Right. Oh.
So,
yeah.
Because you're trying to get to a precise point. So it's very difficult to do a fast pitch up maneuver. And also get caught by the tower.
Right.
Like if you've got a very big landing area, then you could do that maybe.
Right.
But if you want a precise landing,
right over
you
top.
can't do like a sudden pitch up at the end. And then you've got sort of pretty big moments of inertia here. Like big things don't move like small things.
Right.
So like you don't see a super tanker dashing around like a speedboat.
Right.
This is like in a rocket form of a super tanker. So it doesn't move fast. It's like it's like way bigger than a whale. Yeah. So
yeah. Yes, it is.
So it's just not going to move fast.
Right.
Although ironically, liftoff will be weirdly fast.
Yeah.
But it's big rotating things always move slower than small rotating things.
Yeah.
So it's
Should we
but like I said, there's a lot of potential improvements. I mean, yeah.
Man, oh man, wasn't that an awesome conversation? Now in part 3, we're gonna be taking you down to the launch pad, and you're gonna be able to see Elon just walking around at work. It's super fascinating. Again, thank you, Elon, for spending so much time hanging out with me. I'm glad that you had fun, and it looks like maybe we'll be able to do this again. You know I'm game for that. And SpaceX, thank you so much for allowing me to share all this awesome stuff with everyone.